Greetings. I am going to do something in the world of podcasts, mushroom hunting, and stand-up comedy. It seems like the perfect mix. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to search for mushrooms. That's where I am. I'm out in the woods. You might be able to tell that. Oh, here's a mushroom right here. My wife is with me, and I will flip the camera around here. And so I will show you my mushroom hunting while I tell you jokes. Now, I got to tell you, there's some right under there. One. I will tell you this is not for weak stomachs. All right, so right off the bat, let's get the first one out of the way. If you can stand this joke, well, this is the best I got. So why was the mushroom so popular? Because basically, he's a fun guy. Now, you've heard that one before. Oh, you know what? I can't flip the camera around. How do I do this? Let me see. Is there any way? No, you can't flip the camera in the middle of your... Okay, so that means that I'm going to have to add this together. I'm not sure whether I can do that, but I will try. I'm going to flip the camera around, and I'm going to tell you some more incredibly funny jokes about mushrooms. So there was this... philosophy professor. He liked hunting mushrooms on the weekend, and one weekend he went out early spring and felt like this. He had a whole bucket of mushrooms after, like we do, and he thought, I got to share this with somebody. And so the next day for class, he included on his PowerPoint presentation, he included a picture where he had laid out all of these mushrooms on his kitchen table. And it was just this vast array of mushrooms artfully laid out. And he clicked on that, and it appeared on the screen, and the class was just speechless. They just sat there staring at it. He was surprised how long. And it gave him some pretty strong evidence that indeed there is a universal moral awe. All right, so we are hunting for mushrooms, and I was out here earlier today, and my daughter was with me, and we did pretty well. We got quite a few mushrooms, and after we'd been hunting for a while, she set her bucket down, and then you know what happens is you find one mushroom, and then you find another mushroom and another mushroom. And pretty soon she was a long ways away from her bucket. And she had her hands full. And she said, well, here, can I drop them off with you? And I said, I don't know. I don't have much room in my bucket. Right? So I tested these jokes, and I can assure you that all of these jokes are homegrown.
Super funny.
Homegrown. Oh, so anyway, there's two of them. So anyway, we hunt mushrooms out here. I don't know, we're 3 miles from our house, and so it's just far enough that it's a little long to walk, and if we walk, then we don't spend as much time looking for mushrooms. And so my kid said to me, hey, why don't you take my mini bike? Now, he has a mini bike that he likes to ride, and so I was kind of touched that he wanted me to ride the mini bike. The only thing is his mini bike, well, he's been riding it so much, not everything is in perfect adjustment. And so I rode it out, and every time you hit the throttle, it takes off on you, and then you let go of the throttle, it slows down. It's a little bit touchy is what I'm saying, and that's not a problem. So I rode it out, but unfortunately, on my way out, there was something in the road. And so I got back to the mini bike, and when I got to the mini bike, it had an almost flat tire. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do with this flat tire? And got on the mini bike and fired it up and thought, well, maybe I can drive home. There's still a little bit. The tire wasn't completely flat. It was just kind of mushy. And so I took off in it, figured I'll do my best. What more can I do? And I took off, and it worked all right, except that as soon as you accelerated, you'd have to really accelerate to get it going, and then it would take off on you, and then you'd slow down, and then the tire would go flat again, and it would slow you way down, and so you would go forward and back and forward. It's like the whole way home, I was going, mushroom, mushroom, mushroom. One of the things that's really bad. I'm sorry. If this had a laugh track, I would despise the laugh track. Anyway, one of the challenges of when you got a good mushroom spot is to keep it a secret, and so you don't really want to tell people what it is that's going on. And so, one spring a while ago, I was out and hunting mushrooms, and it was pretty obvious. This old guy drove up to me in a pickup, and it's kind of obvious I was hunting for mushrooms, and I could tell that he probably was a big mushroom guy because he was looking. And that day I had been out, and in the beginning of the year, there's a type of mushroom that grows pretty much in the same place. Oh, there I got one I missed. Pretty much in the same place as the morel mushrooms. There's another one that grows, and we call them rubbernecks. They look like a type of morel, but as they get older, they shoot up higher, and their cap is attached. And so their rubbernecks are there, and they're pretty good eating. And the great thing is that if you find rubbernecks, there's a good chance that in a week you'll have some morels. So I had a bucket full of these rubberneck mushrooms, and this guy asked me how I was doing, and I told him, well, I didn't want to tell him, because if I told him that I got some, he would be back and get those mushrooms before me. So I thought of it, and so I answered him with a straight face, looked him in the eye, and said, I didn't get a single morel. Which was true, but, as the day went on, my conscience started to bother me. I knew that even though I technically told him the truth, that I had actually misled him. And I realized I was sort of caught in a semantic moral dilemma. And anyway, so because I felt bad, I kept thinking about it, and decided, I better I better make it right. So I asked someone if they knew who this old guy was. They told me, and so I called him up, and I was kind of glad when an answering machine picked up, because I didn't really want to talk to him, but I felt like I better do what I could to make it right. And so I said, hello, I'm the guy who you saw along the road, and I just, my call is just to tell you that the mushrooms are up. Mycologist? Yeah, that's really a stretch. But you can look it up. Go ahead, Google mycologist, and it'll all make sense, and then you'll laugh, I'm sure of it. Oh, wow, look at this one. So anyway, mycologist, ha ha ha. That's not an easy punchline. Let's just face it. But most people, if I gave them as that mycologist as their punchline, they would they would not fare well with that. So I'm going to take credit where I can. Anyway, or not. So I got to know this. I got to know this old guy, and it was kind of fascinating to meet him. And he was a gruff old guy and would give me a hard time. Started calling me Whip. That was short for whippersnapper. So I started calling him OG. And he said, well, what's that? And I said, it's for old guy. And he's like, well, that's better than my next nickname. That'll be DG. So I called him OG. He called me Whip. And I got to know him a little better. I would go over to his place and take him out fishing, or take him out hunting mushrooms. Ooh, there's a double. And one day in the spring, he hadn't been doing well that year, and I was he struggled with arthritis, and I was kind of trying to take it easy on him. But it came spring, and he figured he wanted to go out, and I'm like, oh man, are you sure? Oh, there's the kids on the mini bike, but I don't think they're going to find us out here. I said, are you sure? And he said, oh, I don't have mushroomatism.
Very bad.
They're getting worse, aren't they? But, it was true. He didn't. He popped right up. All winter, he'd been kind of, down, not feeling too good. Now, all of a sudden, spring came, and he was feeling really pretty good. I mentioned that to him one day. I said, well, hey, OG, can tell you're feeling a lot better. What's your secret? You're getting older and yet you're still ready to go. And he said, well, I have my special tonic. I'm like, your special tonic? What's that? I was like, well, it's my own recipe. But tell you what, after I take that, I feel like a new man. Cleans me out, gets rid of all the toxins, and I'm ready for another year. And I'm like, well, I can't argue with the results, but what is it? Where do you get this tonic? He said, you can't get it. I have to make it. And I said, well, okay, then how do you make it? What's the recipe? And he says, well, you saw me last year. I make my own pickles. I grow my own cucumbers from the garden. I grow my own dill. I can them. I'm like, yeah, I saw that. You make some pretty good pickles. He said, well, every year when I get to the very last jar of mushrooms, jar of pickles, and I don't throw out the pickle juice. He said, I save that pickle juice every year. And then in the spring, always the first 5 mushrooms that I find, I put into the pickle juice. And I let them sit there for 5 days. And those mushrooms sit in the pickle juice. And then I drink myself a cup of this, and tell you what, it cleans me out, and I feel great. He said, you should try it. And I'm like, I don't know about that. Sounds a little odd to me. And he's like, no, you'd love it. It'd be good for you. You'd feel healthy and strong. And I'm like, well, before I could even protest anymore, he had gone to the pantry and gotten his jar, poured me a full glass. Oh, it looked pretty horrible. It was sitting there, and then of course he didn't leave it there. He started taunting me. He's like, oh, you scared or what? And I'm like, I don't know. And I sat there and I was looking at it. staring at this glass, just thinking, imagining. Oh, it was kind of sort of lumpy, and I knew right then. I knew that I was facing a Morel dill enema. I'm getting close to the end, but I couldn't argue with all of. I mean, with the outcome. Tell you what, he popped right back. He had a tough winter, but that spring there's one more right where my shadow falls, right back here, right where my finger shadow is. So anyway, I mean, I couldn't argue with the results. He was up and at him, and one of the hard things for somebody like that, he always had been, I'm sure his whole life, ever since I'd met him, he'd been super competitive, and he was that way now. Had to win if any way thing possible, and so I would go out to the woods, and it was kind of fun because I could move. I was a lot faster than he was, but he just by being patient and looking carefully, boy, we could really compete. It was not given that I'd find more mushrooms than him, but a lot of times I did. It was back and forth, and so that usually didn't matter. Usually we came home with enough mushrooms to eat our fill and to share some with our friends. But one of the things where we really differed was our perfect way of having mushrooms. Now, to me, the best way to have mushrooms was to fry them into an omelet. I mean, not just any omelet. I would take and I'd grate. Oh, this one's really in here. I would grate cheese onto the pan and wait till it got toasted, and then spread the egg, and then another layer of cheese, and then maybe 8-10 mushrooms that I'd already sauteed a little bit. Oh man, that's a good omelet. But not him. No, he was a purist. He wanted to eat his mushrooms just fried. That's it, fried. I mean, if you had a lot of them, he'd eat them other ways, but the first ones of the year always wanted to be fried. And me, I just couldn't wait till I had my first omelet of the year. So we were going out early one year, and I said, well, what are we going to do if we don't find a lot? And he said, well, we'll fry them. And I said, oh no, I've been looking forward to this omelet for months. And he's like, no, we'll fry them. I said, tell you what, we'll have a contest, and whoever finds the most mushrooms will get to decide how we're going to eat the mushrooms. So he agreed to that. That was fair enough for him. So we started hunting for mushrooms, and it was early in the year, and it's always hard to get enough weight, once it gets warm in the spring. And so I decided that, we went hunting, and I got 7, and he got 6. And we came back, and I said, well, I got 7. I won. He's like, oh, no. He said, you got the largest number, but you can tell that mine are a lot bigger than yours. I got the most mushrooms. And I'm like, no, that's not how that works. He's like, yes, it is. And I'm like, oh, all right. So we had to wait till we were home, and I got out my scale, and I shook them off, so no dirt counts, just the mushroom. And I took the mushrooms. I took his 6 mushrooms, and I weighed them very carefully. Of course, he was watching over my shoulder to make sure I wouldn't cheat, which I wouldn't do, but I would be very careful, that's for sure. So I finally weighed his, and then I put mine on the scale, and they started, they were smaller. He did have a good point. I just didn't know whether it would come out. So with a lot of suspense, I gradually put them each on the scale. I dropped the last one on, waited for the number to stabilize, and sure enough, I was 1/10 of an ounce heavier than his. So I turned to him and I said, mycology. These are horrible. Why are you still listening? This is like what we would do if we allowed cruel and unusual punishment in our prison systems. Anyway, but I'm not done, because I went back, took OG home, and he went to his. Go ahead, you got him, or I got him, whichever. Took OG to his house, and I'd never been in. He said, "Well, come on in, see the house, and take a look around. I've never shown it to you." And so I was interested because OG had done a lot of things in his life. For a while, he'd lived up and run a trap line in Alaska. He told me about that, but he never told me that he'd also actually done some sled dog racing, and brought me into this room, and this room was just filled with a bunch of medals and some gear from favorite dogs, some pictures of races. And I'd lived in Alaska for a while, so I thought it was pretty cool. And he was showing me the room. He said, "Yeah, got a lot of good memories in this from my days when I would run dogs." He said, "I call this my mushroom." I think, I don't know whether they have sound effects to have a groan track instead of a laugh track. Okay, but seriously, one more, and I will bring this to a close. There was this archaeologist. She was young. She was just in the field of archaeology, but one of her interests were things that were buried with people that had religious significance, and she was kind of interested in how ayahuasca was used as part of religious ceremonies for a long time. And she realized that there were some unrecognizable things in some ancient graves that actually seemed like they might be petrified mushrooms. And so she wrote her thesis on this and got some proposals and got some grant money, and she was going. Oh, look at these. I think this is a very exploded version of the false Morel, which doesn't look appealing and doesn't look like I'm going to very easily mistake it. So if you ever hear that there's something just like the Morel, it's not just like the Morel. Here's a better one. So maybe you could think it was the same, but not very easily. You'd have to really be not careful to mix that in. Anyway, so she started doing these studies, and one of the things that she needed for her project, she needed to talk to a mycologist, and she contacted the university, and they sent over a mycologist. And he was a young doctorate. He had his doctorate in mycology, which is the study of mushrooms. It probably would have helped, but you Googled it a long time ago because you wondered what I was talking about. And so this this doctorate in mycology, he was pretty good looking for a what would you call it, an academic. But like some academics, he didn't have the most sparkling personality. But you know, this archaeologist sort of took to him, enjoyed the time working with him, and eventually, when he finally gathered up enough courage to ask her out on a date, she said yes, and the two of them started seeing each other socially. Meanwhile, she was continuing her work, and they were pretty sure that they had found in a new tomb that was being excavated, they had found some residue of mushroom, and she was so excited because this would actually prove what was up till then just a hypothesis. And she was working hard on the project, and one day she got a call from her boyfriend, and he was a little bit, well, she could tell he just wasn't himself, and she was like, what's wrong? And he's like, look, I can handle the truth, but I gotta know, are you seeing other men? And she said, well, no. What would make you think that? And he said, well, I called work today. I tried to get a hold of you, and they told me you weren't available because you were dating a fungi. And that's all. I have told you every single mushroom joke that I could think of, and you sat there. Can you believe it? You sat there listening to me. And I don't know, you'll never get that 20 minutes back. But how are you going to get your revenge? Well, I don't know. Maybe that's gone, but you could always tell your friends about it, and then they would sit through, and then if they're like, if this went viral, you wouldn't feel like you were the only one dumb enough to listen to 24 minutes of bad mushroom jokes. Or you could just turn it off and chuckle to yourself, and then every few days when something occurs to you, you could groan again. Hey, thanks for hunting mushrooms with me. I wish you could be here to enjoy them, because we're going to make an omelet tomorrow.